Welcome to the Heart Check Podcast. I am your host, Kanisha, and here we encourage you to pick up your cross and check on your hearts daily. So sit back and wrestle with the question, how's your heart today? All right, so we are on the second episode of the year. Like we keeping them rolling, y'all. I had so much time to plan that it's like, I got the episodes down pat. Okay. I'm over exaggerating. I don't got them down pat. A lot of times, like I'll have notes and things that I want to say, but then I go off of it and then just start talking, and then it turns into something else every single time. Oh, it is cold in my house today. I have a hoodie on. This is not even my hoodie, y'all. This is my son hoodie. So don't tell him I got his hoodie on. He gonna be mad. But oh well. I brought it. So he gonna be okay. He'll be all right. All right. So speaking of sons, I do have a teenage son. He is 15. He is in high school. I know it's hard to believe. Like I got a 15-year-old son. Like that's wild to even say. I have a son in high school. Crazy. I feel like an old grandma now, but I'm not grandma age. I'm like auntie age. You know what I mean? Like I'm in that like auntie. I think I'm a little grown now, but I'm not too old. So I'm all right with that. I'm okay with having a 15-year-old son. So yeah. Today I want to talk about parents and teens in a worldly culture, especially as us being Christians, we live by different principles from the rest of the world. So putting your kids out into the world with people who are different from them is very tough. It's very tough sending him to school every day, knowing the influences, the things he's gonna see, the things he's gonna hear, and keeping him, steadfast on living a life for Christ. Like it's hard. Not gonna lie, I struggle with it every single day. We've had our moments where, he had to find his own way back. Me and his dad couldn't do too much about it because he had to learn things on his own. We let him fall a couple of times so that he know how to get himself back up, which I think is imperative. Sometimes you gotta let your kids fall. That's a whole nother conversation though. I'm not saying like just let them, feed them to the wolves. But sometimes kids be needing to fall in order to pick themselves back up and then them to learn to come back on your own. So we've had those moments already. I mean, I felt like it was too early to have those moments, but I can't compare myself to my son because the world is so different now from when I was growing up that I can't even comprehend what he sees in the conversations he has on a day-to-day basis. Like wild, okay? High school is way different now than it was back then, you know what I mean? I was in high school in the 2000s, like, it was not like this, okay? It just wasn't. So, yeah, but let's talk about it because I think that it's important. We need encouragement from other parents, encouragement on how to handle situations with teens. Teens are a different breed, like, it is not the same as, my 7-year-old or my 9-year-old. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, completely different way of raising my 15-year-old because he's seeing things that normally a 21-year-old person would see, unfortunately. So I have to kinda root him in principles at home and just hope and pray that when he goes out into the world, he stands firm on them. So, see. So I was reading a scripture the other day, and it was Proverbs 22:6. And it says, direct your children on the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. So I held on to that and I considered it when I thought about the principles that I laid out in my household and the principles that me and my husband have came together and made sure that they stick with those when it comes to following Christ, when it comes to being Christians, when it comes to having principles that others may not have, because that is the biggest problem, that everybody's not a Christian, you know what I mean? I don't wanna say biggest problem, but that is the biggest hurdle is that everyone's not a Christian. Everyone is not a follower of Christ. Everyone doesn't talk about Jesus in their household. Everyone doesn't talk about God in their household. I mean, they don't read their Bibles at home. They probably don't go to church all the time. They probably don't, some kids grow up like that. Now in this generation, the kids that grow up in church, they're not growing up in church just to go to church because their mom made them. They're going to church and they're learning things. Like they're going to church and they are having their own conversations, like, it has evolved. Like, I went to one of his, he's in, like, a teen group at church, and it's just different, the way that they deliver the message, the way that they deliver the Bible, the way that they, just have conversations with the other adults that teach them is completely different from just sitting in Sunday school. It's nothing like that. Like, I sometimes I'm jealous I can't go in here, like, and he comes out, he has a great time every single time. So, because things have evolved, like, these kids are really following Christ, like, they really are, standing in it and learning things. There's so many things that my son know that I didn't know, especially in the beginning because at first he was going to a private school, like a Christian private school, and he was learning a lot of things. But then we ended up taking him out and he went to a regular school and, it was imperative that I made sure I put him into a youth group because I wanted him to keep that going. And it's just gotten better and better and better. So, yeah, it's very important. And they do have their own relationships with God. They do. I know back in the time, I hear this all the time. Because I will say that I was not a kid that grew up in church. Okay. I did not grow up in church. Did not grow up in church, wasn't whisked to church every Sunday because my mom and dad made me. I was not there every single day of the week like everyone else's story. That is not my story. That's somebody else's story. Um, And because of that, my interpretation on these things are different. I hear it all the time that people went to church all the time, but then it doesn't reflect their adult life. And that's why I'm really big on the principles with my son because it's like, even if he falls away and does something else in his adult life, he'll still be in those principles, those biblical principles and standards that we set before him. And he'll be like, okay, I can come back home. You know what I mean? I can go back to what I know. I think that planting that into your children and sowing that seed early is the best. I wish I had that when I was a child, but I didn't. But fortunately, I came to the Lord as an adult and now I see everything different. You know what I mean? Blindfolds off. So I am blessed that it happened to me in the way that it did. It happened for my son and hopefully it's happening for my small children as well. As they get older and become teens, I hope that they hold on to those principles as well. Okay. So yeah, that's important. Keeping the biblical principles rooted into your children is first and foremost one of the greatest things we could do. I try to, stay on, the commandments that the Lord wants us to follow so that he can have something, he has a firm foundation. Okay. That's important. It needs to be firm. Another thing that was a rocky trial for me was understanding mental health for teens in 2024, 2025, like today, and understanding the confusion that puberty brings because he is a boy, he's a male. I'm not a male, I'm a female. So him and his dad have a lot of long talks about puberty. Things are changing in his body around him, things like that. So I think that even if you got to go get you a book, okay, even if you got to ask some questions, or I ask his dad questions like, why is this happening? Or how does he feel? Or what's going on in his mind? If he doesn't want to express it to me, he'll express it to his dad, but I think that it's imperative that we try to, like, find ways to connect with our children while they are going through those changes. An example of that would be, like, body changes, life decisions, new realities that they see, seeing things they normally don't see on an everyday basis starts to happen, you know what I mean? Um, their feelings start to change, My son loves girls, like, he loves girls, and the girls love him, you know what I mean? So, like, the feelings, the way that he feels about people has changed. And also him having a sense of belonging. When you're a teen, you wanna belong to something. You wanna be a part of something. My son fortunately does play sports, so he's always belonging to something like a team or something like that. But if your kid doesn't do sports, it can be a friend group. It could be their best friend, wanting to be like people, idolizing people, the list goes on. Social media, rappers, y'all. I'm getting stressed talking about it. But yeah, like, your kids, they have that lack of identity in that high school age where they are still trying to find themselves and who they are. So we try our hardest to lead him to be who he wants to be and not what everybody else wants him to be. Because the world may want him to be one thing, but he may want to be something else. So I think it is important to let your kids be themselves and remind them, like, "Is this what you really wanna do, or are you doing it because this person's doing it or that person does it?" When you see small passions in them, like, I would try to pick them apart. Like, if I see he has an interest in drawing on his downtime, right? I'm gonna go and buy him all the things for drawing because I see that he likes that. You know what I mean? Little stuff like that. I try to pick up on it so that he knows that I'm watching him and I understand. I get things that he likes that other people may not know that he likes. Just I be just trying to learn. Okay, another thing that I have is about listening to understand. So I think I went over this a little bit before my light went out, but listening to understand, meaning that when they're going through their high school drama, their friendship drama, whatever they feel that's very important to them, like the things that's closest to them and is bothering them, just letting them pour out and listening. Not saying anything, no commentary, just sitting and listening, which is really hard for me to do. Not gonna lie. Parents, I don't know if y'all have a hard time doing it. Maybe it's just me. I talk a lot, but I try my hardest to do it because I want him to always feel like talking to mom or talking to dad is a safe place. Like I could talk to them about whatever. Now, we do have lines you're on, like be respectful, don't use foul language. I don't play none of that. But I want him to feel safe to come to me about whatever it is he needs to come to me about, even the hard stuff, you know? And every time that he doesn't tell me about something hard, he comes back and be like, "Mom, you said this was gonna happen." You know? So and I'll be wanting to hit him with the "I told you so." So I just be like, "Mhm." So, yeah, I think that, listening and understanding is definitely key when it comes to teens because sometimes they just wanna be heard, even if it doesn't make sense and you've been through it before and you wanna tell them about your story when you were younger, just fall back, listen, and then, teach them after. So, yeah, I think that it is a good judgment call to sit back. It makes them know that you're just being present. Be present in the moment. One of the big things that we do in our house, especially with my daughter, she's not a teen yet. She's not a teen yet. She's 9. But with my daughter and my son as well, is giving them reminders. I love to give them the biblical reminders, what God says about them, what God feels about them, and how they should love themselves. I like to remind them, like, things like they are loved, they are worthy, they're wonderfully made, they're created by a perfect God. God cannot sin against them. He loves them. He's a father to them, for them to seek refuge in him, especially when they feel like they have nowhere else to turn to. Those are things I like to keep my kids knowing at all times, even down to my littlest ones. And you would be surprised. Like kids are very smart. They hold on to things that you say and they don't forget anything. Like, we could be randomly doing something and then my son will be like, "Mom, remember when you said," you know what I mean? Like, they remember. I like to point them in the direction of Jesus at all times. All of my kids have their own devotionals. My daughter has a little devotional. My son has one, even down to the littlest one. He has his own. We read scriptures together. We pray together. And like I said, I always give them the reminders that they're loved. Sometimes they need to know that they're loved, even when they don't feel loved. So, yeah. And remember too also that they can share things with God that they can't share with you. Kids don't share everything with their parents. You got some kids that walk out the door and they are completely different people when you're not around. But I want them to be able to know that if they can't share with me, at least share with him. Right? Because that is the person that you can seek refuge in. If I'm not available and you don't think that I can handle it, give it to him. So that's something that I remind my son with a lot because he feels like there's a lot of things he don't want to tell me because he knows my reaction. And it's like, okay, if you don't want to tell me, fine. If you don't want to tell dad, fine. But at least go ahead and pray about it. So keeping your kids close to Christ is it's like, I don't even know, it just feels really good to have the Lord cover your children in their times of need, so, feels really good. It feels really good, it's a great thing to have. And also, there's a scripture about that is Psalms 46 and 1. It says, God is our refuge and strength and ever present help in trouble. So reminding your kids that no matter what happens, that they can look to him is also a plus. I think that keeping their eyes focused on Jesus is very, 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 very crucial, especially in a Christian household, because the world is going to tell them not to. The world is going to show them the opposite. So even if we're watching a movie or watching TV, I always remind them, like, this isn't real. You know what I mean? Or I'll tell them, they say that I always interrupt movies because they know what I'm gonna say. It's to the point where my kids know if something's demonic on the TV, I'm gonna call it out and call it demonic, right? But even though I'm always doing it and we laugh about it, now they have an eye for it. You get what I'm saying? So, like, your kids pay more attention to you than you think. They pay attention to what you do and what you say. So, with teens, it's crucial because the world is terrible, okay? The world will show these teens the opposite of what Christ wants them to believe. So, because of that, we have to make sure that we setting those principles at home and we are building that foundation in our children. So, yeah, it's a lot, it's a lot. I'm rooting for y'all. Be encouraged. Be encouraged that there's a father that covers them. There's a person they can go to whenever they need them, and that there is a ever-present loving God. So, just be encouraged and, keep fighting that good fight with these teens, cause sometimes it gets a little ghetto. I ain't even gonna lie. Sometimes I listen to the stories from his high school, and I'd be like, "What?" Like, things be happening in high school that I would never think in my wildest dreams, like, things that never ever happened to me, like, what? The world has evolved so much, like, I go to this school, and the girls there, we look like sisters, and I'm trying to figure out how old is they? Who you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. So, yeah, even through all of that, with teens, it's hard. Find community, find youth groups, find things to put your kids in so they can relate to people that they may not, so they can relate to others in ways that they cannot relate to you. Put them in those things, have them reading that scripture every morning before they go to school. Pray over your kids. Pray to the moment they go out the door, okay? I pray for the whole school. Every day I say a prayer for my kids' school, from the janitor to the principal, everybody be covered in that building, stuff like that. And my son hears me say it every single day. So, yeah, raising teens is hard, but remember that we're raising the people that's going to be the next leaders, the next teachers, the next pastors, the next, leaders. Like, these are the people that we're raising. So we got to raise them with these good principles. All right. So, yeah, that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Heart Check Pod. See you guys in the next one. Bye.